Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Scott Luton and Jenny Froome here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Jenny, how you doing?
Really well. How are you doing?
We're doing wonderful. Great to have you back with us. We've really enjoyed the Supply Chain Leadership Across Africa series. You bring the best guests, and you're continuing that here today.
Yeah, we've got lots of great people in this profession on this continent. So thank you for letting me keep on bringing them to you.
Agreed. Best people, innovation, ideas, talent, you name it. So, hey, but Jenny Froome, for the three of y'all that may not know, listening, Jenny Froome serves as COO of SAPICS, which is, as we always talk about, doing wonderful work from a professional development and networking standpoint. You can check them out at sapics.org. And we're going to double dip within the SAPICS ecosystem here today. We got a very special guest. So MJ Schoemaker. Did I get that right, MJ?
Very good.
MJ Schoemaker is the current president of SAPICS, which is, like we said, the professional body for supply chain professionals in South Africa. And as we all know, this sort of role as a volunteer one, which all three of us can relate to, is people like MJ who take the time out of their quote unquote real jobs to give back, or as we like to say, give forward to the global supply chain community. So big kudos to MJ for doing just that, giving forward and helping to expand, improve, engage the global industry. So MJ, good morning. How are you doing?
Hi, Scott. Good morning to you. Good afternoon, Jenny. We're all in the different time zones. It shows how colorful this little collection of people are. So thanks so much for inviting me to your program. It's always fun to chat and have a little light conversation.
Agreed. You know, I'm not sure, based on what we're going to be talking about, if we could call it a light conversation. You've had quite a journey, and you're doing some heavy lifting in industry. So we're gonna have to roll up the sleeves and get down to work. MJ, what do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think as we go through our little chat today, supply chain is right out there, and everyone has to roll up their sleeves, like you say, and it's still continuing. So we need to keep going. There's no breaks at the moment, that's for sure.
No breaks and no finish lines, which I know all three of us can agree on. All right, but we're going to save that heavy lifting for after we talk food. So Jenny, you know, we love talking food around here on Supply Chain Now. You know, whether it's food or sports or the arts, you name it, we have to have those departures from, you know, the craft, as we call it, you know, the work, email, it chases us down. We got to take time out for that balance. So Jenny, your quick comment, because you would agree with us, right? We got to take time to laugh and entertain ourselves, right?
We'd go mad if we didn't, or more mad, perhaps.
Right. I wish I could say mad like that, Jenny. All right, we're going to have you do some voiceover work for us. All right, so MJ, you are based in Cape Town, in South Africa. So I hear, and I hope to see it in person, experience it in first person soon, but I hear it's the most magical place, blessed with excellent food and my favorite, outstanding wine. So MJ, tell us about some of your favorite food moments that you can share with us.
Well, I hope you don't mind me talking about wine, because I know it's early for you. I'm sure Jenny won't mind. Yeah, so the food here, I mean, South Africa as a whole and Cape Town, you will never get a bad meal unless you choose to go for fast food if that's what you like. That's not really my thing. So I enjoy trying lots of different restaurants. So there's a very famous restaurant here in Cape Town, actually, that's in one of the top 10 in the world. And I've had the privilege to go there 3 times now. And every time I go there, you feel like you're on a journey with an artist. It's you know, they have steam coming out of the dishes. You don't even recognize what it is. They make it the shape of an apple and it tastes completely different. So La Colombe is one of my absolute favorites. You have to break the bank for it, but it's definitely worth it. And chocolate and coffee tasting. There's an honest chocolate shop that make their own chocolate. and you get to taste all the different homemade chocolates with a different type of coffee. So just not always sticking to the wine. And of course, I have to go to the wine, is the cheese platter with the fantastic Western Cape wine. I've always said that's my hang loose meal. So if anyone puts me on death row and I want my last meal, that's what's going to be: a cheese platter and a good wine, a red one.
So I got to ask you a follow-up question to you both. White chocolate, thumbs up or thumbs down?
I love white chocolate, but it's not really chocolate, unfortunately. It's the fat of the chocolate. Yeah.
That is, I think I've heard that before. Jenny, thumbs up or thumbs down on white chocolate?
Oh, definite thumbs up.
Really?
Delicious. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm the oddball here. I'm not a white chocolate fan.
You're a thumbs down.
Yes, I'm a thumbs down. I love dark chocolate though. I love a dark chocolate. And really white chocolate's only chocolate I don't care for. So cheese, wine, chocolate, MJ, you're talking our language here for sure.
You have to come visit.
We're gonna, yeah, and to do the chocolate tasting, I was lucky enough to do one at the end of last year. I'd never done one before, and they did it virtually, and it was ever so clever. Really? And we actually got the real chocolate to taste, but just right from the very raw sort of cocoa bean almost right through to the developed product. And it's just so fascinating, the different flavors that are in the real chocolate. It's very fruity. It's an amazing taste sensation.
Well, so speaking of sensations, Jenny, you have, Jenny always knows what's cool out in the industry, and she always helps me, which I'm a little bit slower behind the curveball, helps me move along and act like I'm more cool. So you put some sensational show on my radar, Somebody Feed Phil. And I think it's on Netflix, I believe. Yeah. Is that right? So what is this show all about?
It's about the guy who actually, his name's Phil Rosenthal, and he wrote Everyone Loves Raymond. And he's very witty, he's very clever. He's a little bit geeky, but that's part of either his irritation or his endearing quality. And he literally travels the world and is in a different city each episode and tastes different food and engages with the real people in those places, sort of avoids a lot of the touristy places. And it's just a really fun program, especially as it links travel and food at a time when we can't travel or try different foods in the authentic places. So knowing Scott's love for different foods and whatever, I recommended it because it's like a 40-minute escape. Oh, you can pretend you're traveling.
Right. We're gonna have to sign up for that, MJ.
And he came to Cape Town.
I think so.
Okay. So to be all transparent with you, my dear wife Amanda is our more eclectic eater. She likes everything, right? Mm-hmm. She's helped me get out of my meat and potatoes mindset, which was really fun. Yeah, Amanda. Exactly, more fun. So Amanda's helping me develop my palate. But we're going to check out Somebody Feed Phil. One final question, MJ, before we move on to your professional journey. You mentioned West Cape wines. Is that the West Cape? Is that geographically where a lot of the vineyards are?
Yes. So, I mean, there are actually vineyards in very strange places also in South Africa. But the main sort of area where you would get the wine is the Western Cape, which is quite a large province. And it has quite a few different types of climate zones, from really sort of Mediterranean to a little bit desert. So we have the Karoo. And so you get a very nice selection of different types of wine that suits every palate. So if you can either go to the West Coast or you go down more towards the East, it depends on you. And one little tip for you to give to Amanda is tell her to try the chili chocolate with red wine. See what happens.
Okay. Chili chocolates with red wine. Done. Yes.
Okay.
And it's also where the Huguenots landed with the first vineyards that were planted in the Western Cape from France.
Yeah. Really?
The first, not vineyards, but the little vines.
Huh.
Little vines, yeah. So there's a French influence, yeah.
Really? Well, we're gonna have to do a wine episode, so we're gonna have to save that for later.
Yep.
So MJ, maybe we'll do something on wine supply chain, which has been an interesting thing to look at here in the last couple of years. But I digress. MJ, I understand you've had quite a journey, and your journey sees you now back living and working in South Africa. But up to this point, From what I hear, you've been working with large corporations across Europe for much of your journey. So I bet you've got some stories, maybe some dead bodies that, that are in closets somewhere. But I digress. Tell us a little about your journey leading up to what you do now.
Sure. How much time do I have? No, I'm just kidding. I'll make it very short. Just to put it in context. So I sort of closed the circle by sort of returning to South Africa. Funny enough, my father was also in the pharmaceutical business, and he was transferred every 6 years. So we as kids, I started in Ireland. I was born there. We were then transferred to Hong Kong, and then we landed in South Africa. So South Africa for me is quite an important country because it's my formative years, right? It's where I went to school. I graduated. I actually qualified as a high school teacher. And I say that just to let everyone know, it doesn't matter what you study, you can still be successful in life. So I was actually a phys ed teacher, majored in history, and I never taught. And I ended up where I am today. So that's just a little side note as well. I worked in a bank for a while, and then I decided, okay, let's go to the Netherlands because I'm Dutch. So that's where I should go. So I went there and found a job, and that's actually where my supply chain career started. If I give you the years, you'll know exactly how old I am. It was around the late 80s when I left South Africa. And then after a couple of years, you're going to start laughing. I went to Switzerland and started up a restaurant. So I'm saying that so that you can also divert if you want to. Supply chain is everywhere.
Yes, it is.
So I ran a restaurant for 6 years. So talking about food, it was a good start for me. And then I left the restaurant business. It's a very tough environment. Supply chain is obviously very, very prominent there, but it's really, really hard work. Don't earn a lot of money, but it's a great lesson. If you have kids, let them go be waitresses and waiters. They will know how to do customer service, right? That's how you learn. So then I moved on to Lego. I joined Lego. They were based in Switzerland. They had some factories there. I left Lego after about 3 years, and then I waited 4 years actually, and then went to a high-tech company. So they were making DVDs and DVD players. So that was in the 90s, right? That's when all that stuff started happening.
Right.
And they went into liquidation. So that's again another lesson. I'm telling these things because companies, you see the sign on the wall, tomorrow that sign can be gone. So that company went into liquidation. Was a fantastic experience, not the liquidation side, but what I learned through that, to appreciate that not everything's there all the time. It's not going to last forever, and you've got to keep going and keep being creative. So, and then I actually joined Johnson & Johnson. So I spent 15 years of my career with Johnson & Johnson.
Wow.
Of which
Okay.
10 are in the pharmaceutical sector. So when you said, it's about actually saving lives, and that was really a great experience. They gave us a lot of free hand. An experience. What I remember the most there was really about someone a man from Peru actually contacted me. I don't know how he got my name, and said his son is dying of hairy cell leukemia, and I was in charge of that product. And he asked, would I be willing to send him an ampule? And I just said, of course. I didn't ask anybody. I called the office in Brazil, and I said, or in Argentina, I said, guys, you got to send in the ampule. And they said, well, who's going to pay for it? I said, I will give you a credit note. Just send that ampule. And
wow.
I got a letter back from that guy that just brought tears to my eyes. So, that's working in that kind of environment really allows you to serve and teaches you how important that is. It's not just about earning a salary or having a title. So, my career, before I left for South Africa, I was global head of demand planning for the whole of Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which is the biggest sector of Johnson & Johnson. And then also the global head of sales and operations planning for Johnson & Johnson worldwide.
Wow.
So I think from, waitressing and being a high school teacher, that's pretty okay. So, if that's also, and I think that's important to send that message. It's good to study, you must study, but it doesn't mean that you can't do something else.
Right. Let me ask you really quick, MJ. So quick thought. I think also your story illustrates we need all types of folks from all walks of life in supply chain, right? One of my favorite examples is we talked with someone from a very large technology company that's focused in the classic arts in college, got their degree in classic arts, and then stumbled across supply chain later. And now he's thriving in supply chain. And that is just such a beautiful example. Your example is a wonderful one. But my quick follow-up question, with your all of your experience in pharmaceuticals and 15 years, I think, if I heard you right, what is your quick take on this incredible, the shot? Why can I not, the vaccine, the development, the quick development of the vaccine, and then the noble mission of getting it out to all four corners? Can you comment on that, MJ?
Yes, I think, normally R&D in the pharmaceutical environment takes 10 years. So it actually takes 10 years before a product actually even gets to the market, right? So that's why pharmaceuticals are also very expensive. And that's why you see a lot of pharmaceutical companies doing mergers and acquisitions, because it's cheaper to buy that IP than to sit for 10 years and do that R&D. So that's when you see J&J, for example, is over 50 companies, because they just buy them all the time and buy that intelligence. They actually bought my uncle's company, and it's their top product, Remicade. So they just took over that company and they slowly renamed it into Janssen, and they sold that product. When we look at the COVID-19 vaccine, I think we must remember that the COVID-19 vaccine is not, they didn't start from scratch, right? Because we in South Africa, we already had SARS, we had other types of diseases. So it's not far off from there. So they could start from not right from the beginning. And I think it was a good test for them, because it just shows that maybe you don't need those 10 years. And if you really put your mind and matter to it and your experience, you can pull out a vaccine. And we know a vaccine always has to be updated, right? You can't keep giving people the same vaccine, because that virus will also mutate, and then you have to redo it, and you have to try and understand. I'm not a scientist, but you have to try and understand, okay, how can we cope with it? So I think there were a lot of things in place already that helped with the speeding up that process of actually coming up with a vaccine.
Thank you. That is helpful. I think this is the first time I've chatted with someone with your pharmaceutical industry experience about the vaccine, which has been, headline news for a couple of years now, and thankfully so. So Jenny, I don't want to, gosh, so little time, so much to talk about. I don't want to hog the conversation. Where are we going next with MJ, Jenny?
So really the sort of the burning question, and I think it was one of the first questions I ever asked MJ, was that with all this experience overseas, what made you come back to South Africa? What was it that was the driving force?
When I left South Africa, actually, everyone said, you'll be back in 5 years. So 20, 25, 30 years later, I'm back. At least I made it. So, I always intended to return, as I said, and when the time was right, I decided to come back. One of the personal reasons is my family is here. My mother and my sister were still in Europe, but they sort of followed me in the end. So we were all ending up together here. But also, I just felt like, what I always kept tabs on South Africa. I was always going back to visit my family, and I just felt like I want to share my expertise with the South Africans, because Europe works completely differently. Even though everyone says it's the same, it's not really the same, especially now that I've actually had a job here in South Africa. So I just wanted to share my expertise with youth. I think that's really important. With SMEs, I think the big corporates, they are way ahead. They have the money, they have the means to do that. But the small, medium enterprises, they really struggle, I help a lot of them now, and they get software for like 3,000 Rand a month. That's like what? $200, not even $100. Whereas these big corporates take the huge software, and these little businesses, they need that help as well. So, and I miss the friendly South African culture, of course. But, what made me came back is really like, it's my home. It's where I spent my formative years, and I really feel like I can contribute. So that's really why I came back.
Was definitely glad that you came back. Recently you helped a lot we had very bad riots back in July last year, and I know Scott was very supportive, because it was obviously quite an emotional time for all of us. But MJ, sort of in the immediate aftermath, you were a terrific spokesperson for the profession, not just for SAPICS, on really the importance and the strength of the supply chains in South Africa. What is it that you think sort of sets the South African standard as far as our supply chains and the people who manage them?
I think, there's different levels of expertise in South Africa. It's a very mixed bag. And Scott, I don't know if you know this expression, but in South Africa, we always make a plan, right? We always say that. If something goes wrong, we say, don't worry, we'll make a plan. So the logistics, I can't tell you what the plan is because it's always different, but they'll just say, we'll make a plan and then they'll do something. I think the logistics in the distribution space showed a lot of excellence, especially that everyone went online and things had to be delivered. We saw how the shelves were emptied within a day of the toilet paper rumor, and within the following day they had filled the shelves again. So I think and that's talking about the bigger corporations. Obviously the smaller ones, they were ruined. That was very, very sad. Scott, if you were following that, there were people, their whole life savings were gone because that's the only shop that they had.
Right.
But I really feel the South Africans really came to the party when it came to logistics distribution. We have an amazing online company. I'm one of their best customers, and I'm sitting out in a little village here in the mountains, and they deliver here as well. And they do it. They get it right. They arrive and amazing customer service. I think that's where South Africans are really, really very good.
Yeah, I'd agree with those sentiments, and thank you for all that you did in sort of giving the profession and the professionals the sort of the recognition that I think that they deserve during that difficult time, and continue to do so.
Thanks, Jenny. Jenny kept throwing me on the radio. Like there was some guy on the radio and they said they lost connection, just call MJ. And I don't know what I was doing. And they called me and said, MJ, we need to ask you a question. You're live in 1 second. I said, what? TV, and it was really a pleasure to do that because I am passionate about supply chain. So even when they would call me and say, can you talk in 5 minutes? We're live. Wasn't a problem, it was like, sure, just call me. And, I didn't even know what they were going to ask me. I wasn't allowed to know. So it was, I learned a lot. Thanks, Jenny, to be impromptu.
But I think that, so the whole, I've spent certainly the last kind of 15 years, 20 years of working in this field, explaining to people what supply chain management is. And I will still call it a COVID silver lining, that at last people don't kind of glaze over when you mention supply chain management because they don't know what it is. They're actually excited to know more about it. And again, I'll quote Greg, who said, we've wanted this for so long. We've wanted the seat at the C-suite table. We need to make sure that we're ready to act. And I think that certainly here, that's coming true. We've obviously got a lot of challenges in South Africa and also on the continent. Every country is different. Every country has one common denominator, and that's our infrastructure, which is always a big challenge, amongst other less positive things. But let's focus on the infrastructure. But what do you see as being probably one of the greatest inhibitors for supply chain progression, and that we can focus on South Africa?
Sure. Well, I said earlier, making a plan, right? So making a plan is a reactive state. So if you look at the maturity curve, it's at the bottom is react, right? Then you anticipate, and then you try and manage and influence it, and then you shape it. So a reactive state is not a good thing because it's costly for customer service and it's also costly for the business, right? So you're always running behind the curve. So I find that in South Africa, the long-term planning is not a strength. They don't think far enough ahead. The horizons are too short. If I look at going to Kpis and say, okay, let me see your budget for 2023, they don't have one. Even now, I'm working with a company that doesn't have it for this year either. We're already in the year, right? Our year is, of course, till February, right? So they still have till the end of the month. But I said, you should have known that 6 months ago. You should have known that a year ago, right? So they don't think ahead and they sort of go with the flow. Also, I find that digitization is very, very outdated. I'm working with a company now. They haven't changed their software in 25 years. And I'm speechless. And I know it's not all about software. It also has to be people, process, technology, right? So if you look at technology, that's 20%. People, process. If you can have a great process, but if the software is not doing it for you, that doesn't help, or the people don't know what they're doing. And if you think your processes are great, and that's another thing I find in South Africa, they don't know what good looks like. They think what they're doing is good. And when you show them what good looks like, they're all surprised. And I'm being very general now, right? There are businesses that do know that. So supply chain is not seen as a key area until COVID hit us. And I think, I always say to Jenny, that's an opportunity for us, and we must grab it with both ears. And it's often not taken seriously. They think we're the customer service and the trucks. So it's a very old-fashioned way of looking at it.
And procurement.
Yes. Well, the government calls it procurement. It's actually supply chain, but yeah. And it's a very sales and cost-driven environment, and that causes a complete imbalance. So finance will say no because it's too costly. Or they'll say, do a full run, do a day's run for that product because it's cheaper, but the sales can't sell it, right? And sales are saying to us, I'm going to order 1,000 because I know that I'm probably only going to sell 500, but at least I have another 500 just in case of. And then when we don't sell it, why does supply chain produce too much? So
really quick, MJ, you're speaking to that earlier as you were describing your journey, you're talking about the global SNOP role that you led, and you're speaking directly to the balance, and oftentimes, unfortunately, the off balance between the operations side and the sales side for a variety of factors, right? Call it overconfidence on the sales side, call it underproduction on the ops side because they don't trust, right? What the sales teams and professionals are telling them. There's a myriad, if I said that right, of reasons why that balance doesn't exist. If you could, based on your experience, why do you think? What else have you seen time and time again, perhaps, that creates that off balance when it comes to SNOP?
Well, certainly conflicting KPIs, so key performance indicators. So if the salespeople have one KPI, the production has another KPI. Just my example is a good one where the production has a KPI that they're only allowed to spend X amount of the economic production quantity.
Right.
So they will just make lots of stock because it's cheaper for them, but it makes no sense because sales didn't even forecast for it. And then you'll have the finance saying, well, the GP is not looking good anymore. It says, yeah, because we produced a lot, but we didn't sell anything, so now we're writing it off. Right. So those are those imbalances, right, where people are not talking to each other. And if you see, in my little business that I have, what I called it was PRO, I'm PRO, SC, supply chain, and E2E, end to end. So what I'm saying is that everybody should be following and be measured by the same shared KPIs. So they don't have the silo where they throw their problem over the fence and then the other person has to sort it out. That,
and not only could they be driving with different KPIs and singing from a whole different songbook, but they're not communicating. So those differences don't come up to surface level so that we can do something about it. Or is that kind of some of the things you see too, MJ?
Oh, absolutely. And I think we all speak a different language. So if a supply chain person goes into the SNOP meeting and sales and marketing are sitting there and finance and the MD and hopefully HR, and they say, well, your bias is XYZ, everyone's going to look at them and they'll shut down, because they don't understand that language. So we also, as supply chain people, must take ownership that we need to learn the language of the industry. And sales and marketing people should also come and learn about supply chain. If I had my own business as a sort of a business, not a consulting business, but a business where I would be delivering a service or doing shipments, I would make sure that the sales and marketing people work in supply chain for a while, and vice versa, right? So we all understand each other's stuff. That we don't just look with the blinkers on and say, this is my area, so I don't care about the rest. And then you measure, you have to measure them on a shared KPI. I was measured on GP and I wasn't in sales. So I did my best to make sure that sales reached their number, because my bonus was hanging on it. if my bonus was hanging on the economic production quantity, we'd be overstocked.
Right.
Because, hey, look, I produce really well. I can't sell it. That's not my problem.
Right.
You know?
That's not my problem. And unfortunately, we hear that quite a bit in global business, right? All right. So Jenny, I think sales and operations planning is such a fascinating topic, the way I look at it. And there's some companies out there that really get it right, and they're committed top down to making sure the communication's there, the ongoing, the communication structures there. As MJ is speaking to, the immersion of the teams in kind of not the opposite operations, but the different functional areas, I'll call it. And then probably, arguably, for the majority of business, none of those commitments exist, and the imbalance lives and thrives because of it. So anyway, we'll circle back. We could spend a whole week, maybe a whole month on S&OP. And MJ, it sounds like you've got a lot to contribute there. Jenny, where are we going next with our dear guest here?
I was just going to ask MJ what, since coming back and starting your own business and getting involved in South African businesses, but also the South African, the sort of greater supply chain community, what are some of your personal sort of highlights that have really stood out for you so far?
I think one of the big ones is actually, again, COVID with that silver lining gave me an opportunity. So I was approached by the Department of Health of the Western Cape, and they asked me to help them during COVID. So they have a program where the public health patients have to go to a clinic, and they have to stand in a queue, and they go and pick up their antiretrovirals, they go and pick up their hypertension products, etc. And they would go to the clinic and do that. So when COVID hit, they started cleaning out the clinics, right? They said, no, we have to make space for the COVID patients. So all those people must stay home. But then we had that issue is, how do they get their medication? And Scott, in South Africa, it's someone who walks like 10 kilometers to try and get to that clinic. It's someone who has to try and pay a taxi. The taxi costs them, 20 Rand, but they get 1,700 Rand per month to live off. So that 20 Rand is a lot of money, right? If you put it in context. So what they asked me to do is to help them to set up a plan as to how can we get that medication to those patients. So I actually went out on a field trip, and I went to places like Dunoon and Blue Downs, which is like, you don't go there. Best you don't go there. But I went in my car, little lady driving around, and I went to visit those clinics. And it was an eye-opener, because we have a very privileged life, and those of us that have been successful and have made it, we don't really know what goes on the other side. So I was highly educated, and obviously we're living in Switzerland for over 25 years, and I wasn't exposed to that kind of thing. So but fantastic people all trying to help each other. It's a great community. And what we did was we actually partnered with, and those companies actually did it for nothing. We partnered with the likes of Uber. So I'm giving Uber some good advertising here, and Bolt, for example, where they helped us move the medication it would come from a depot, be dropped at the hospital, the clinic, and then Uber actually helped to transport it to another drop-off point. And then there's these healthcare workers that actually usually walk around and give bed baths and help the elderly and stuff. And they carried these dustbin bags. Scott, like this, 2 dustbin bags on their shoulder. And they walked from house to house and were screaming over the fence, "Are you home? And I've got your medication." So this to me is just, I was speechless. I said, where have I ever seen that before? So I felt really, really privileged that they asked me to do that. And actually, because I did that, I got again approached to help them on the national level, the Department of Health. And that was actually funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I spent about a year doing that. And to me, that's an absolute highlight, because I'm giving back to the community. Lucky me, I earned something, but I probably would have done it anyway. And I got to see, the real world out there, and had some really, really good conversations with people I would never normally have spoken to, and to really understand their issues. And we really have no idea, right? Because we're more privileged. Yeah. So
we live in our bubbles.
Yeah, that was the absolute key highlight for me. obviously being able to, be here on the board and working for J&J is great. But this one resonated more to why I actually wanted to come back. So I was allowed to drive around during COVID. I had a permit, so that was quite nice. I didn't have to suffer too much in the lockdown.
So you're speaking to the next question I want to ask, and so it's a natural segue here, because as I heard you describe how rewarding some of these positions and journeys and activities that you were involved in, how rewarding it was to you, it starts to craft your personal why, right? What is your why? So I want to expound on that a little bit more. So, now you continue to give your time voluntarily to help SAPICS grow the supply chain community in South Africa, certainly, but I would argue really across Africa, because we know supply chain is global. It's a global community, a global ecosystem. And gosh, if you help one region, or one city or town or state or country, you're really having a broader impact. So all that work you do voluntarily, why is that important to you?
It's that's really a great question, and I think it's sort of part of my personality as well. I mean, Jenny's known me for a little while now. I've maybe got the helper syndrome, I don't know, but I just feel like we can build a better South Africa, and I can say maybe Africa, maybe even world. That's your expression, right, Jenny? Is supply chain makes the world go around, and give opportunities to improve their own lives and those of others. I think especially in South Africa, and I think it's probably also in the countries in South America and India and stuff, where normally you have one person. If you fire that person, 10 people will not eat. Right? So if we can help the people to help themselves, and so the COVID-19 pandemic showed how important supply chain is. Without it, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
And as much as the pandemic was terrible, it was great for us. So I'm not happy we had COVID, of course, but I would like to grab that opportunity, grab that silver lining and say, guys, look at what an important profession that this is. And again, it's just like, because I love it so much, I just want to give it to everybody else. I want to throw out all these hearts everywhere. And that's sounds really weird, but yeah, it's just
Valentine's.
Sorry?
I said it's Valentine's month.
Almost, maybe that's why I said that. But I think it's just something that's I always wanted to do, and I've done a huge circle. I mean, it took me 30 years to get back, but at least I'm well equipped to do it. So it's okay.
It's more than okay. It is so important that our industry taps leaders like you that have been there and done that and are willing to help put in elbow grease to make it better, especially make it better for who's going to be following us. And like you said, and Jenny, I want to get your comment here too. No one wishes that we had COVID here, but since it's here, it is invaluable. It is so paramount that we learn from it, so that when the next big global thing happens, and it's curveballs keep coming. We know hopefully none of them are going to be the size of this for a long, long time, but we'll be better prepared so there's less suffering, quite frankly, because as Jenny says, supply chain does make the world go round, right? Whether it's vaccines, these critical drugs that MJ you're talking about that save lives, or food on the shelf. Jenny, I'll your take here.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that this totally highlights, because in this audience listening, hopefully to this discussion, there are so many people who are so passionate about supply chain management and who in their own way give back to their own communities. And it again re-emphasizes the fact that a platform like Supply Chain Now just gives us the opportunity to share these stories, to highlight these individuals, but remember that one individual is representative of so many supply chain practitioners who are out there. So it's always just a big shout out to the people who keep everything going. Agreed.
And one more comment, and then I want to shift gears to forecasting and planning with MJ. We had Monica Trilsch with Infor with us on a recent webinar. And one of my favorite things she shared, which I bet MJ and Jenny are going to be kindred spirits with, I'll try to get the quote right, but she said, people have been the salvation of global supply chain during the pandemic, not technology. And MJ, you said something similar a second ago. I think that message, so loud and clear, is certainly, like you were saying earlier, Jenny, certainly one of the wonderful silver linings of what we've been through and continuing to go through across the globe. So, okay, so much feel good vibes here. And hopefully for folks listening, maybe for folks listening in high school or college or early in the profession, maybe they hadn't made the jump yet. Maybe they're just kicking the tires on supply chain, but there's so much purpose and mission and good work you can do in this profession. Okay. So speaking of the profession, forecasting and planning, absolute critical, right? It's like having a football to play the game of football. You got to have it. So question for you, MJ, and Jenny, once we get her answer, I'd love for it to have you weigh in. So how do we encourage more younger professionals, right? The folks I just kind of called out, to get more interested in these critical elements of supply chain management? MJ.
Well, I think we have to start with education, right? So universities, colleges, having it part of their curriculum, having it part of, their supply chain studies. I'm seeing a lot of suddenly supply chain study courses appearing. So people are jumping on the bandwagon there. And it's funny, you said about that person who was studying art and then moved into supply chain. Do you know that the person who studies art or music are one of the best demand planners?
Really?
They do the best forecasting, yes. They actually did a survey to try and find out who are the best ones. And it's probably because of that analytical brain is doing at all the keys of the instrument. So they're able to manage and coordinate. So it was actually quite an interesting thing to hear. So we need to grab all those art students. And the SAPICS does a lot of youth development sessions, and we do a lot of webinars and there's a lot of on social media, because, if you want to get to the youth, you can't send them an email. You can't sort of put a letter in the letterbox. That's just not going to work, right? We have to WhatsApp them. We have to entice them, right? And, I often use the analogy, someone always says to me, what do you do, MJ? I said, this is my analogy. I said, supply chain is like baking a cake. If you do not plan to have all the ingredients and the tools, how are you going to bake the cake, right? So there's a lot of problem solving there. And I think if we can get the youth to understand that it's about problem solving, it's about analytics, it's supply chain, just forecasting and planning. You have your finger in every pie, right? You got to talk to sales and marketing. You need to talk to finance. You need to maybe go and check and see. Is there, even a planner could be doing something where they see some new hashtag on online. This is something Coca-Cola does. They see a new hashtag and they put it into their computer and they say, put it on the next label that comes on a Coca-Cola bottle, and poof, it's there, right?
Right.
So it's so varied, and it's very good for people that get bored easily. So I get bored easily. So I need a job that, like, okay, now there's another problem. Okay, now how do I fix that? And now that has happened. So we need to go to the youth. They're not going to come to us. We need to go to them and say, guys, this is such a lot of fun. Let's do it. And there's different games you can play. I mean, we have a couple of colleagues, hey Jenny, that have some nice games that people can play, make it a bit competitive. But we need to move away from the old-fashioned way of sending that message. We really need to reach that in a completely different way. Agreed.
Hey, one additional point, and I don't think this runs counter to what I said a second ago, what we said a second, but the latest technology, right, is in supply chain, especially in recent years, as supply chain tech, freight tech, final mile tech, you name it, is exploding, right? And so for any young folks listening, if you love all things tech, some of these things that MJ mentioned, hey, you can find it in global supply chain. Jenny, I want to get you to, based on what MJ shared, some of those tactics there, some of the things to do, some things not to do. Mm-hmm. I would add, MJ said an email won't reach young people, a letter won't reach young people. I would add whatever mom and dad suggest to their kids aren't going to reach young people. What else would you add, Jenny?
I think it does. It boils down to communication and how we communicate. But it's also, MJ, to your point, it's how do we make it fun? Because, especially if you've been at university and it was a traditional university, which we have quite a lot of, and the learning is by rote and there isn't so much experience because we don't have the sort of the apprenticeships and that sort of format of education so much. It's slowly coming back. But I think, how do you teach those people who aren't the academics, who don't want the degree, who actually want to be able to do? And that's where I think that, you know, supply chain management has got so many opportunities for people who aren't the theorists. You know, they actually want to do the practicality of it. But it's introducing them to people like you, Scott, like you, MJ, people who've actually, you know, earned their stripes, done the stuff, and had fun doing it and love doing it. That just it creates that energy that people want to. And then it's going back to the whole association community. It's making sure that these organizations survive and thrive,
right? Because
they create a home, they create a community, they create a place where these youngsters can actually learn and develop.
Yes. 100%. Yeah, please, MJ.
I may just add, you know, I don't know if you looked at the World Economic Forum. They did a huge report. It was hundreds of pages long about the future jobs. What is still going to be here and what isn't, and supply chain is going to be here. So if the youth are worried about what job they should choose or what area they should choose, supply chain will always be here, because exactly what you said earlier, Scott, it's the artificial intelligence and the machine learning, that's not going to solve it. We need people, right. We need problem solvers. We need someone to do that exception management, right? Not that boring stuff. Let the computer do that.
Right.
Let the software do that. It's about that exception management and that problem solving. That's what we need them for.
Agreed. It's like, I think as it goes, when John Glenn, let's see here, he was the first to orbit the Earth. Gosh, I'm a space nerd. I can't believe I'm getting this wrong. But anyway, to your point, MJ, John Glenn, they had computers at the time. They're in the 60s, but he's like, I don't want the computers. I want Katherine Johnson. If Katherine Johnson says the numbers are good, I'm going. And I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's such a great story. Back then, people were called computers, right? Which is fascinating to think about now. But one last point, MJ, and we'll make sure folks know I connect with you and with Jenny. So make a plan. You're sharing on the front end, that saying y'all have in South Africa. You know, right when you said that on the front end, one of the things that appeals to me about global supply chain, back when I was in it, right? You know, actively as a practitioner, is when we hit a problem, whether it was bad parts or late delivery, whatever it was, man, getting that team together in person around that table and all having the kindred spirits of, hey, it stinks, but we're going to make a plan. I mean, that I think appeals on the human level. It appeals on the professional level. And it's just that sense of really pseudo family is exactly what it is. And, you know, if you're looking for that from a career standpoint, supply chain's got that in truckloads. Okay. So MJ, follow up on that comment. And then if you would as well, let's make sure folks know how to connect with you. So your final thought, and how can folks connect with you?
So my final thought, just for all the supply chain people out there, you know, your career is yours, right? So you need to do something. I think a lot of the mistakes that, you know, that people make, and I had to learn that as well, is don't sit back, bring good work and think it's just going to happen. You need to go out there and say, hey, I did this good work. I did more than my job description. What does that mean for me, right? So don't be afraid to do that. I think it's really, really important. Make sure that you connect with people, you network, you have a mentor, you have someone to help to bounce things off. And it can, and I would recommend someone not from supply chain. So if you're in supply chain, go talk to somebody in QA, or go talk to someone in finance, because they see it from a different angle. Look, use that sort of blue ocean thinking. Don't always go in the red ocean like we always like to do. Stick what we know and feel comfortable with. So that would be my recommendation. Don't be afraid. You know, go out there. You don't have to have a PhD. Study, because studying is good for you. It trains your brain. It's not about the content, it's about how you use your brain later in life. And don't give up. And the world has changed. It's never going to be the same again. Be ready for disruption. And Scott, I think I love your example. You say, let's all just sit around a table, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's physically, and say, guys, we all hate this problem. And I'm talking about sales, marketing, everyone, we hate this problem. We've got a bee in the I had that problem where we had the bee in the syrup for a cough medicine. And I said, just take the B out, get a teaspoon and just take it out. And they said, no, we have to send it back. I went, oh my gosh. So, just, sit together, make a plan. So I kind of like that one. And work together. Don't work against each other. Share your KPIs. All have the same number. Don't all be working for different numbers. Don't agree a number and walk out the room and have another number in the secret. No, let's all work to the same number. And if you can't reach it, say so. Don't wait till you hit the wall.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it and let's try and anticipate it and find the gaps, find the opportunities, and then maybe sell a different product, or we can help with a different product. So don't be afraid to work together when you're in supply chain. And I'm talking to all guys, not just supply chain people, but everyone in the business.
Man, those are words to live by, a lot of what you shared there. And yeah, ask, especially that last, ask for help. It's okay to ask for help, and whether that's professionally or in any other vein. So that's kind of a mini master class to wrap on there, Jenny. MJ, how can folks connect with you?
So LinkedIn is great because you can also find out who I am and what I've done. So, I'm a very pragmatic person. So if you read it and you think this is not for me, then you don't have to contact me. If you think it is for you, then contact me. You can also get me through my email address, mj and then pro, SC for supply chain, E2E for end to end at .co.za. So in South Africa, it's .co.za. In the UK, it's .co.uk. That's my email address. Reach out. Happy to have a chat, have a conversation. I get a lot of people reaching out to me saying they're doing research. Can they chat to me? And I said, that's also fine. It's not always about making money. Obviously I have a job, but I'm out there to help, and I'm out there to just make sure that I can help people find their way.
Love it. I love that. MJ Schoemaker, the current president of SAPICS, again, the professional body for supply chain professionals in South Africa. And I would add beyond, right? Because I love the work you are doing really across Africa. MJ, wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for your time. But hey, don't leave just yet. Jenny, man, another outstanding and very practical and inspiring, I would add, conversation we've had here with MJ. Thank you for all of your wonderful facilitation and your leadership. How can folks connect with the one and only Jenny Froome?
LinkedIn, boringly. I am active on LinkedIn. I love Twitter. I will always respond to tweets. And also through the SAPICS website. So, and I'll just amplify that thing, the ZA. Also, you see, I'm multilingual, not just ZA. But yeah, easily done.
I think I'm embracing the Z. I think I'm embracing the Z. I think it helps folks understand you're saying Z, and I've never thought about that my entire life. So I'm embracing this.
It's a good Scrabble word as well.
Yeah. That's right. All right. Well, folks, hopefully you enjoyed this wonderful conversation with MJ and Jenny. I tell you what, it was so many notes and ideas and universal truths I would add in this conversation. So big thanks to our dear friend, Jenny Froome. Big thanks to our featured guest here today, MJ Schoemaker. And we're going to have both of y'all back soon. Jenny, I think we already have our next couple of conversations teed up. Is that right?
Yep. We're all ready and raring to go with some exciting guests.
So stay tuned, folks. If you like this conversation, and gosh, I hope you did. I really enjoyed Jenny and MJ's perspective. Be sure to find us wherever you get your podcasts at Supply Chain Now. But if you do anything based on this conversation here today, you gotta be like MJ and Jenny. Do good, give forward, and perhaps most importantly, be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time right back here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.